As we know, DK Metcalf is one of the most physically dominant receivers, even players in the NFL today. Being 6'4", 240 pounds, and being able to run like the wind is not a combination you see very often. It's stuff that Julio Jones and Calvin Johnson can do, but it's rare. Through 2 NFL seasons, he's eclipsed 2,200 receiving yards and has 17 touchdowns and averages 15.6 yards per reception and has 141 catches. He's gotten off to a great start to what could be a Hall of Fame career if he keeps it up. But motivated professional athletes never want to settle, they want to keep getting better. And although DK is coming off a season of over 1,300 yards and 10 touchdowns, I think there's another level this guy can reach, which is scary. In my opinion, here's how the Seahawks can unlock or unleash DK Metcalf in 2021. As always, if you enjoyed the video, leave a thumbs up and subscribe for more NFL content in the future, and let's get into it. Here's the thing about the NFL. If you are good at a certain thing, you may get by for a little and have your success, but eventually these coaches will figure you out. It's the same thing in the MLB. If a hitter comes up and dominates right away, you better believe they'll find your weakness. And that may have been something DK Metcalf faced in the second half of last year, which is why his numbers may have severely dropped off in the second half aside from one game. In DK's final 7 out of 8 games, he averaged 8.1 targets per game, only 4.2 receptions per game, 48.2 receiving yards per game, and only 11.2 yards per reception. Not that those are quote-unquote bad numbers, but they don't reach the standard we're accustomed to seeing from Metcalf. He did have a monster game versus the Eagles in week 12 and a good showing in the playoff game he was in, but 7 games of down production is enough to raise an eyebrow. The main problem I saw from Metcalf was the lack of various different route trees. And that's why I made the baseball analogy before for those wondering, because it's entirely possible that teams caught on to what the Seahawks wanted DK to do each game. Coming out of Ole Miss, Metcalf was never considered a flawless route runner and was one of the reasons he fell to the second round in the first place. And I will say Metcalf has greatly improved as a route runner from year 1 to year 2, but I wish the Seahawks would take advantage of that more. But to help disguise that or cover it up, Seattle used Metcalf at things he was only really good at. Running go routes, post routes, crossers, and routes that didn't require much of a change of direction or planting your foot in the ground and making a cut. And clearly Seattle got by just fine the first 1.5 years of having Metcalf do this, but it seems like teams have caught on. And the last thing Metcalf and the Seahawks want is to go into 2021 and realize you don't have enough in your repertoire to beat what these defenses are throwing at you. Seattle does have a new offensive coordinator this year, so it is entirely possible that we see Metcalf used in a different way this year. Brian Schottenheimer was the Seahawks offensive coordinator for 3 seasons, and although the offense had success at times, they never seemed to do it for an entire season. We'd see times where Russell Wilson started out the year as an MVP candidate, then taper off, and same thing for their running attack, which at times looked unstoppable, but then at times looked not so good. There just wasn't enough consistency, and it was also rumored that Pete Carroll was not on the same page as Schottenheimer with some of the play calling philosophy. Their new offensive coordinator, Shane Waldron, recently worked with the Rams as a pass game coordinator and also has previous ties with Washington and New England. So coming from the Sean McVay coaching tree, you would think this guy will have some success with his offense, but we'll see what they do in 2021. Anyway, I went back and looked at DK Metcalf's routes on Next Gen Stats, and here's the information I came away with. And I will say as a disclaimer, this does not add up to 83 receptions because for some reason Next Gen Stats did not have their week 14 matchup versus the Jets, and I probably miscounted a couple times, but overall this is pretty solid information. On fly routes and go balls, he had 14 receptions, which was 17% of his catches. On out routes, he had 12 receptions, 15% of his catches. On comeback routes, he had 3 receptions, which was 4% of his catches. On curls, he had 9 receptions, which was 11% of his receptions. On crossers, drags, and slants, he had 31 receptions, which was 38% of his catches. On digs and in routes, he had 3 catches, which was 4%. And on the other miscellaneous catches, which were behind the line of scrimmage or just quick screen passes, he had 9 receptions, which was 11%. And in total, that's 81 receptions from his 2020 season, so it's a pretty nice sample size. But overall, you get the gist of it. A ton of his production came on crossers and drags, and the comebacks and dig routes were a rare occurrence. That's where the Seahawks can unleash this guy in my opinion. Instead of making his routes predictable, why not have him run every type of route concept there is? He's already a nightmare matchup for opposing corners, so why not give them more to worry about? And as I said earlier, I know Metcalf isn't the best route runner or the quickest out of his breaks, but he can do it and he has been getting better at it. And he's still only just 23 years old, so who says he can't improve even more? And maybe the Seahawks use the old "if it ain't broke, don't fix it" motto, but they should realize that in the second half of the year he was not the same player as the first half. Metcalf's season started to trend down in the final 8 games of 2020, so if you multiply his 8 games by 2 and make it a full 16 game season, that would have been 80 receptions, just about 1,000 yards, 1,030 to be exact, 12.8 yards per reception, and only 4 touchdowns. It's a good season overall, but it's better to be proactive than reactive, that's all I'm saying. It will be interesting to see if they use Metcalf in more of the Robert Woods role, if they use the Rams offense, sense where he's playing outside about 60% of the time and inside about 40% of the time, because so far Metcalf's first 2 years, his snaps on the outside severely outweigh his snaps from the inside or the slot. It depends if Seattle wants to use Metcalf as a high reception guy or continue to use him to stretch the field, but we shall find out. Leave in the comments your expectations for Metcalf in 2021, and once again, leave a like and subscribe for future NFL content like this. And also, shout out to the channel Play Football for providing the footage of DK Metcalf's route running. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll talk to you next time.